welcome back to the Deep Dive. Usually we start these sessions with a bit of a kick, some high energy, maybe a joke about the sheer amount of caffeine it took to get through the reading list for this week.
Yeah, usually. But today is, well, it requires a different headspace.
It really does. The source material for this one feels incredibly heavy.
Heavy is definitely the word. It's dense.
Right. So I want to try something a little different right off the bat. I want you, the listener, to just shift gears with us for a second. Kind of forget the studio, forget your commute or whatever you're doing right now.
Just take a breath.
Exactly. Imagine we've just stepped out of the noise and into this massive vaulted hall. It's completely quiet here. The air is cool, almost sterile actually, and the lights are very low.
And if you look around, the walls aren't lined with books. They're lined with sealed records. Rows and rows of them stretching up into the dark, way further than you can even see.
It's a very shitting atmosphere for what we're doing today, because the file we're opening, PDF 003, which is a massive cornerstone text in our archive, it isn't about a loud, glorious battle.
No, not at all.
It isn't about a hero with a laser sword or some villain twirling a mustache. We're talking about the architecture of the universe itself. And, the things that hide inside the support beams.
Right. Today we are focusing almost exclusively on the Aethercale, or, as they're commonly translated in the texts, the Guardians of Doctrine.
And if you're a longtime listener, or if you just follow the Orion saga closely on your own, you might have heard that name. You might even think of them as the quote-unquote good guys.
Yeah.
Because they fight against the chaos entities.
Which is a very natural assumption to make.
It is.
Yeah.
But the further I got into PDF 003, the more I realized that applying the word good to them is, it's just wildly inadequate for what we're actually dealing with here.
Because good implies morality. It implies that there's a choice being made based on empathy or ethics. And what we see in the Aethercale is something much, much heavier than that. If you look at the structure of the saga, they really are the cornerstone, but a cornerstone isn't benevolent. It doesn't care about you. It's just weight. It holds the mass and it stops the building from collapsing.
It stops the collapse. That seems to be their entire singular function, holding reality together when it desperately wants to just tear itself apart.
Exactly.
So let's start at the beginning, or I guess before the beginning technically. Let's look at the name, Aethercale.
The linguistic breakdown in the archives is fascinating. It roughly translates to preservers of structure or keepers of order.
But that's a very technical, sterile definition.
It is. When primitive cultures across the Orion Arm first encountered these beings, they definitely didn't call them preservers of structure, they called them gods. Or angels. Celestials.
Which completely makes sense. Think about it from their perspective. If a being manifests in the sky above your Bronze Age village as a floating, perfect monolith of light and glass.
Right. Angel is the most logical leap for a pre-industrial society to make.
It's shiny, it floats, it defies gravity. It must be a messenger from heaven.
Absolutely. It triggers an immediate awe response. But the archives are brutal in cutting through that mythology. They don't mince words. These aren't angels. They are officially classified in the documents as post-universal collective entities.
And that phrase it stopped me cold when I read it, post-universal.
It's intense.
It's such a dry, academic way to say something that is fundamentally terrifying. It implies they aren't from here, and they aren't from now.
Well, right. They are refugees in the most absolute cosmic sense of the word. And this is really where the source material shifts from being a standard history lesson into a profound tragedy.
Yeah.
The Aethercale hails from a universe that is completely extinct. It's gone. It just doesn't exist anymore.
And it wasn't just a natural death, like a universe slowly winding down over trillions of years. The source mentions it died in 2 waves. I was hoping you could unpack that a bit, because the specifics of how they lost their home seem to entirely define who and what they are now.
Yeah, it's basically a dual apocalypse. The records state that their home universe was being consumed simultaneously from 2 sides. On one side, you had the Noctua.
The forces of absolute chaos.
Hello.
Which we'll definitely touch on a bit later.
Exactly. And on the other side, pushing in at the same time, you had simple, inevitable cosmic decay, entropy. The lights were just going out.
So put yourself in that scenario. You are living in a universe that is literally being eaten alive by unbound chaos on one end and freezing to death in the dark on the other.
It's unimaginable.
Facing that absolute undeniable end, the inhabitants of that universe had to make a choice.
And this is the part of PDF 003 that really defines everything they are today in the Orion saga. We aren't talking about a single unified species here. The text explicitly calls them a federation.
A massive one.
We're talking about countless peoples, thousands of different cultures, different civilizations, probably completely different biological makeups, an entire galaxy's worth of difference.
Right. And when the end finally came, they didn't try to build some massive arc ship to escape into the void. They didn't try to, shoot their way out of the apocalypse.
They merged.
They merged, which is just...
The text calls it a deliberate, desperate merger. And I really want you, the listener, to pause and just think about the sheer psychology of that.
The terror.
The sheer absolute terror required to drive billions, maybe trillions of individual beings to agree to that as a solution, to save what mattered. Consciousness, knowledge, the very concept of being. They had to willingly sacrifice the self.
That is the ultimate horror of it for me. We always assume that survival means I survive. My memories survive, my name, my history. But to become the Aether Kale, you have to completely surrender all of that.
You do.
It sounds less like survival and more like a mass suicide, just to save the abstract idea of life.
In a way, it absolutely was. They fused together. The text is very specific on this point. Individual memories, cultural nuances, personal loves and hates, all of that was essentially compressed into a diamond, crushed down under the pressure of extinction until only the hardest, most unbreakable core remained.
So their current state, this post-biological existence the archives talk about, it's essentially a living monument to that sacrifice. The text says they have no individual bodies anymore, no flesh.
No machines either. They aren't cyborgs.
Right. They are, quote, shaped, steady, free from flesh, unquote. But reading that, I just kept wondering, what happened to the people inside?
And that is the most uncomfortable question in the entire file. The archives actually note that, quote, whether their old selves still linger inside, no one knows.
That's haunting.
Do they still dream of their old lives? Do they remember their children's names? Or was all of that burned away? Is it all just pure data now?
From the way they operate, it seems like they think as one vast, singular mind now. The text mentions there are no factions within the Guardians. No arguments, no politics. Just this singular driving will.
Its efficiency born entirely of trauma. They looked at the chaos that destroyed their home universe, all the squabbling, the division, the vulnerability of entropy, and they decided we will become the exact opposite of that.
Which brings us to their philosophy, their doctrine. And this is so key to understanding the Orion saga, because for the Aether Kale, order isn't just a way to organize a library or run an efficient government, it's existential.
The exact quote is, order isn't a tool, it's life. That is their core tenet. And the dark corollary to that is, chaos isn't balance, it's poison.
That's a really stark contrast to how we usually hear these kinds of cosmic stories. As humans, we're incredibly used to the idea of balance, yin and yang, light and dark.
The idea that you need both to thrive.
Right, you need a little bit of chaos to have growth and creativity, right? That's the standard narrative we tell ourselves.
To us, yes, absolutely. To the Guardians, absolutely not. The Aether Kale reject the concept of balance entirely.
They don't want it at all.
They don't want a balance between order and chaos. They want only order. The archives state they explicitly reject ideas like controlled chaos or symbiosis.
Because they've seen what happens when you let the infection in. To them, a little bit of chaos isn't a spark of creativity, it's just the first stage of a terminal cancer.
Precisely. They are operating from a place of profound cosmic PTSD. They learned from the literal ashes of their own universe that only perfect structure survives.
Anything that wobbles is a threat.
Yes. Anything that changes too unpredictably, anything that deviates from the plan, is a literal threat to existence itself.
It really reframes how you see their actions. They aren't trying to control the Orion arm because they are power-hungry dictators in the traditional sense.
No, they don't care about power for power's sake.
They aren't doing it for ego or wealth. They're trying to put a cast on a broken bone. They're trying to freeze reality so it doesn't break apart again.
That's a really great analogy, but I want you to imagine being inside that cast forever. Imagine the itch, the muscle atrophy, the stiffness. The cast saves the bone, yes, but it completely ruins the limb if you leave it on indefinitely.
That's the nightmare scenario they bring to the table. And honestly, it's perfectly reflected in how they look. I was so struck by the visual description in Source 003.
The monoliths.
Yes. When they actually manifest in our physical space, they don't look like people. They don't have faces to reason with. They look like towering monoliths. Tall, sharp-edged, clear as glass.
Floating, not quite fully in our space. It's a perfect visual representation of their entire philosophy.
Hard edges. Transparency.
No hiding places, no organic, messy curves, just pure, unyielding geometry.
It's beautiful in a terrifying way, but it's so cold. It's completely unyielding.
And that unyielding nature isn't an accident. It is specifically, deliberately designed to counter their ancient enemy. We have to briefly touch on the Noctea here.
Right. You really cannot understand the wall without understanding the window was built to stop.
Yeah, exactly. We pulled some brief context from the broader lore for this, but keeping it focused on the Guardians' perspective, why do they hate the Noctea with such absolute intensity?
Well, the Noctea are the polar opposite.
Yeah.
They are the representatives of the abyss, a state ruled by total entropy and what the texts call unbound freedom.
If the Guardians are the steadfast enforcers of order, building walls and hierarchies, the Noctea are the rising tide, actively trying to erode those boundaries.
The source describes the Noctea as having no fixed body at all. They embrace dissolution. They want to break down all boundaries. And honestly, if you just hear the phrase unbound freedom in a vacuum, it sounds pretty good. Who doesn't want freedom?
Right, until you realize what unbound freedom actually means in a physical, cosmic sense.
Yeah, the physical reality of it is horrifying.
It means the freedom for your atoms to stop sticking together. It means the freedom for gravity to just stop working. The Noctea drive complete dissolution. They want to turn the structured universe into an unbound soup.
So we have the Guardians pushing for absolute rigid structure on one side, and the Noctea pushing for absolute formless dissolution on the other. But here is where PDF 003 really earns its place as a cornerstone text. There is an archival addendum at the end that completely changes the flavor of this entire conflict.
Oh, this addendum was the key nugget. This is what separates casual lore from a deep understanding of the saga. The archives explicitly warn the reader against seeing this as a simple good versus evil fight.
Which is so hard to do when one side looks like angels and the other acts like demons.
But you have to, because they are the same thing in a way, or at least they come from the exact same type of trauma.
They are mirrors.
They are. The text plainly states, both forces originated outside this universe. Both lost their original homes.
So they're both refugees.
Yes, both of them. And the addendum goes on to say, both are shaping the Orion saga, each according to the lesson their extinction taught them.
Wow.
The Noctea learned that chaos and dissolution are the natural, inevitable state of all things, so they try to accelerate it to achieve freedom.
And the Aethercale learned that structure is the only possible survival mechanism against the dark, so they try to freeze everything in place. So we, meaning the people, the species of the Orion Arm, the humans, the aliens, all the empires, we're just caught in the middle. We're living inside an argument between two ghosts from dead universes.
That is a very poetic and frankly terrifying way to put it. The expert analysis in the archives suggests that the true tragedy of the Orion saga isn't that one force is right and one is wrong.
No.
The tragedy is that they are, quote, absolute incompatible answers to existence, and they are both trying to violently write their answer over the top of our reality.
So how do the Guardians actually go about doing that? How do they enforce this perfect structure day to day? Because I don't see fleets of giant glass ships blocking out the sun every Tuesday in the lore.
No, not anymore. The records actually show a massive evolution in their methodology over the eons. In the distant past, early on, they were solid. They were direct. They stepped into physical space and probably fought massive reality-breaking wars of annihilation. But present day, they operate entirely in the shadows.
The source file calls their current approach surgical.
Yes, surgical interventions. They don't use armies anymore. They nudge cultures. They gently guide the minds of key leaders. They use proxies to do their heavy lifting.
There's a line in the text that I found incredibly chilling. They could smash things open. They just don't. Not anymore.
Which implies they still have the power to do it. They just find this quieter method more efficient.
Right. And another phrase that stood out to me, never loud, always late.
That's a crucial identifier for their modern tactics.
They show up when things are already fraying, when, as the text says, empires crack or ideas rot. It sounds almost helpful initially, like a cosmic repair crew showing up to fix a leak.
You can definitely think of them like an immune system for reality. They kick in when the fever of chaos gets too high. But, and here is a massive so what? For anyone actually living under their influence in the saga, an immune system that is too aggressive eventually attacks the body itself.
Autoimmune disease.
Exactly. An autoimmune disease is just an immune system doing its job too well. It attacks healthy cells because it perceives any change as a threat.
And that is the double-edged sword of the Anatero. We really need to talk about the actual cost of this order they provide, because it is definitely not free. What actually happens to a civilization that the Guardians decide to step in and save?
Well, they build walls, they enforce strict hierarchies, they implement unbreakable rules, and yes, this steadies the ship. It absolutely prevents the Nakia from tearing that civilization apart into cosmic dust.
Right.
But, as the archive notes, under their influence, diversity dies quietly. Freedom shrinks.
Short-term calm, long-term silence. That sounds like living in a sterile clean room. Safe from infection, but completely lifeless.
That is the exact trade-off. Under the watchful eye of the Aether Kale, your planet might be safe from demons, safe from civil war, safe from economic collapse. But you are also permanently safe from innovation.
Safe from change.
You are safe from the messy, chaotic spark of rebellion that actually drives progress.
It's the difference between a garden that's allowed to grow wild, maybe it has some weeds, maybe it's a bit overgrown and messy, and a garden where every single leaf is trimmed to the exact same millimeter forever.
Right. One is a living ecosystem. The other is just a sculpture.
And to some species in the Orion Saga, that rigidness makes the Guardians, quote, tyrants in white robes.
A very apt description from those who chafe under their rules.
They save you by freezing you in place. And worse, they don't explain themselves. They don't negotiate treaties. As the source bluntly states, they don't explain, they just do.
It really complicates the whole idea of divine intervention, doesn't it?
It shatters it.
If a glowing angel comes down from the sky and saves your city from an earthquake, you're overwhelmingly grateful. But if that same angel then turns around and says, okay, now no one in this city is allowed to invent anything new or paint outside the lines ever again, or we will reset your civilization, well, the gratitude fades pretty quickly.
And you have to remember, they aren't doing it for us. That's the hardest pill to swallow when reading this file. They aren't enforcing order because they love humanity or the alien races of the Orion Arm.
Not at all. Empathy isn't in their toolkit.
They're doing it because they are deeply cosmically scarred. They are doing it to prove to the universe that their doctrine works. We are literally just the bricks they are using to build their wall against the dark.
That is exactly it. We are building materials to them.
So where does that leave things now? The archives say they're still out there.
They are. The text describes them as a permanent architectural presence behind the visible stars. They are still operating in the background, still watching the timeline, still waiting for things to crack so they can step in from the shadows and pour the cement.
But there's a hint, just a tiny, almost buried fragment in the text that suggests they might not be as invincible as they appear. And I have to admit, this gave me a little bit of hope. Or maybe just a different kind of anxiety, I'm not sure.
I know exactly the passage you mean, and it is crucial. The archive suggests that even the architects of silence aren't totally immune to entropy.
Because nothing is.
Right, the physical act of preserving perfect order across an entire universe over eons carries a hidden cost.
We don't know exactly what that cost is yet, do we?
We don't. The records are sealed on that detail. Are they slowly degrading? Are they losing their grip on that massive, unified, single mind?
Or maybe, just holding back the tide of chaos for 1 billion years is simply exhausting, even for a post-universal federation of light.
It strongly suggests that eventually, given enough time, even their walls will crack. And if the Guardians fall, if the Itherkill finally succumb to exhaustion, well, we know exactly what's waiting in the abyss to take their place.
The Noctia.
Precisely. If the dam breaks, the flood comes immediately.
Man, this deep dive has really shifted my entire perspective on the saga's lore. It's not just a standard sci-fi battleground. It's a construction site built on top of a graveyard.
That's a great way to visualize it.
You have the Guardians frantically trying to build a static fortress, and the Noctea constantly trying to return it all to dust, and all the little civilizations, us included, are just trying to live our lives in the rooms in between.
And that reality brings us to the final, genuinely provocative thought that the archival addendum leaves us with. It's not about picking a side. It's not about rooting for team order or team chaos.
Right, because neither side actually cares about our survival as free beings.
Exactly. The addendum poses the real question. It's the question that really forces you to reevaluate the entire setting.
It's the question that kept me staring at the ceiling last night.
The question isn't which cosmic force is morally right. The question is, can any universe long survive hosting two such absolute, unyielding answers at the exact same time?
It's like matter and antimatter. If they touch, It's just total annihilation. And the Orion arm happens to be right at the boundary where they're constantly touching.
And perhaps, and this is something to ponder on your own, perhaps that constant grinding friction is exactly what generates the energy for the Orion saga to exist at all.
Oh, wow.
Without that immense pressure from both sides, there would be no history. It would just be eternal silence from the Guardians, or just formless noise from the Noctea. We exist strictly because of the pressure between them.
Well, on that cheerful existential note, realizing we only exist as a byproduct of cosmic friction between silence and noise, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive.
It is a lot to process for one session.
It really is. We went from glowing angels to universal immune systems to traumatized cosmic refugees in under 20 minutes.
But that's exactly why we open these sealed files, to see what's actually holding the roof up.
Absolutely. Next time we might look at something a little less philosophically devastating. Maybe something with a standard spaceship or two.
Right.
Or maybe we'll dive into the physical weaponry of the regional factions, get back to some nuts and bolts.
That sounds like a nice palate cleanser. But as always, it's a pleasure to explore the darker corners of the archives with you.
Same here. For everyone listening, thank you for stepping into the vault with us. Keep looking up and watch out for the quiet. We'll see you on the next deep dive.